Welcome, lovely one, to the Meant for More podcast. My name's Lisa Clifford, and I am building the world's most empowering Meant for More movement, leading millions of heart-led purpose seekers from feeling insignificant to invincible. So I truly hope you enjoy this next episode. And we have the gorgeous inside and out Anya Bloom. And I met Anya at an Impact Catalyst event. And she was the most welcoming light. You know, when you've done a long journey and you arrive and there's this fresh, gorgeous face, welcoming. You've got no idea the value of a welcome. But underneath that shining, welcoming, big heart is a woman who has had a lived experience that's placed her in her area of expertise. She has taken her pain and created it into purpose. She's amazing at what she does. Ultimately, Anya just loves helping people be themselves. You've got no, I'm going to say it again, you've got no idea what it's like to be yourself unless you haven't been yourself. And sometimes it might provoke us to think, well, am I being myself? But the stress it puts on your nervous system, on your identity, on how you show up in the world, who you show up as, what you feel your place is in things, really does all relate back to whether you are being yourself or not. And if you're not being yourself, then who are you being? What costume do you have to constantly put on every day to show up as that identity? But in addition to Anya's brilliant expertise in the difference she makes in the world, she is a practitioner of EFT. And we'll get into why she went into EFT, hypnotherapist, coach, international speaker, and author. And one of the books Anya is in, I'm showing it for those that are watching us on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn right now, is Catalyst of Change. Anya is one of 20 authors that contributed to this book that is designed to go out into the world and help people connect in with their true inner power and fire. And Anya's chapter is Be the Catalyst of Your Own Confidence. And we call Anya the Confidence Supercharger. And you have a program called
Tapping into Confidence.
Tapping to Confidence. Love it. So, Anya, thank you so much for gifting us your time, your heart, and your story today. And I would love it if we were to start with the question. This is the Meant for More podcast. And so I would love to know a time in your life where you had that, I describe it as a stirring, a knowing, an ache, or sometimes it just is a boulder that lands on you where you know you are meant for more. And having read your chapter, I can imagine one of them, but which story would you like to share with us to start?
It's a great question. I've been pondering that. And what I want to share is something that I actually haven't shared very much, but it was like a boulder coming to me. And I was 49 and I was on holiday with my then husband and 4 children in a caravan. And my ex-husband was a big drinker. Obviously been drinking that night. I went to sleep, woke up in the middle of the night with this voice, this loud voice saying, "You are part of the problem." I go, "What? What do you mean? Me? No, I'm looking after him. He's the problem. I'm just helping him feel better and telling him when he drinks too much, etc." And that stayed with me, and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't put it down. And I went home and I did some research. I already had the self-help books on the shelf, the self-help books, but, I reread some of them. I went, okay, I need to look after myself. This is a big message here about me. And you talked about identity. My identity was fully colluding with him, looking after him, putting him first, completely ignoring me. So I went to Al-Anon, which is for families who are affected by somebody's drinking.
So just say the name of that again for anybody.
Al-Anon, that's in the UK. There's probably different ones in different countries.
Yeah, and we'll put a link to that in the description box.
Little by little, I realised, I didn't know who I was. I thought I was doing a great job at looking after him. No, no, because by me counting the bottles and having those conversations, he didn't have to face it himself. But I didn't know who I was. It was a bigger, bigger problem of identity and of being a people pleaser. And I hid. I was so hidden. I didn't know who I was. I thought I was doing a great job in the world, but I was so terrified, so full of fear and shame and grief and very, very, very unhappy. Yeah, which I was hiding from everybody because I didn't want to admit that it wasn't a perfect marriage. Well, we 18 years together, look how well I've done. But of course, it wasn't like that. So I took the focus on me, started going on self-help weekends, doing things for me, gradually untangling myself from that very toxic relationship. And it was such a wake-up call. I think it came from the divine to wake me up, because that was not my role to stay in a loveless marriage. And it led me to that point of being ready to divorce him. But it was very, very profound.
I think when you're in a relationship where there's dependency, as in your husband was dependent on alcohol, maybe you were dependent on him in some way, but I'm particularly talking about his dependency on alcohol. We can empathize with them when we know what their pain is that's led to the alcohol dependency, I'll say, rather than abuse. So is that what happened for you, where you knew you'd gone through as a little boy or as a man? Was there a story behind his drinking, or had it
Oh,
just got
yes.
out of hand?
Yes, I'm much more aware of it now than I was then, because
Mm,
he couldn't communicate. But yes, of course, he has huge pain inside him
yeah,
and huge suffering.
yeah.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I know we don't want to share that because that's his business, isn't it? But that, when you know, as a loving partner, when you know their journey and what's led them to be in this pain cycle, it's really hard to leave them, because you feel like, and I'm obviously projecting here, because you feel like you are going to be yet another person that abandons them or rejects them or adds to it. But in fact, the staying keeps them in this unconscious state, doesn't it? And I'm also guessing for you then that you knew for a while that it wasn't right, but then when you acknowledge it, acknowledgement is a level of consciousness that is in front of your face, isn't it? And then there's the accepting, this is my reality and I'm coercive in it in some way.
Yeah,
And then there's, what change do I want to make?
yeah,
And so
because
what did it take? What did it take? I mean, it sounds to me like you took steps to empower you so that you were clear in your thinking, clear in your where you were going to. But what did it take to actually leave something that you'd committed to so wholly and wholeheartedly?
and I had that guilt of 4 children as well. But it's like once you know, you can't not know,
Yeah,
once you realise that.
yeah.
And it was a process. I started telling people and being
Mhm.
vulnerable, because I was so unsupported in my marriage. But actually, talking to people was really important, and admitting how unhappy I was, both in Al Anon and with my very good girlfriends, who were really surprised, or maybe not all of them actually. Maybe they knew. I think they probably did know. So it was a process, and I got to the point where there was nothing left in the relationship, because I'd untangled the unhealthy bits, and I realised we didn't have a relationship. So I told my girlfriends, and some were surprised, but actually I think most of them knew. I hadn't been hiding it that well. And, it's taken me on this huge journey of self-development and self-love, finding out who I am, and it all continues. It never stops. But that was the real beginning of my shift. Yeah.
And I'm guessing that you have a very strong value of loyalty. And that's what kept you in and protecting his image, as well as the united image, the family image, and your image, that sense of loyalty to him and loyalty to the family. And sometimes our values can be of great service to us, and then sometimes they can keep us trapped, can't they? Is that what happened for you?
think I was just very frozen as well. My whole
Mm,
nervous system was in fight or flight, really. And I think that had a lot to do with it. I couldn't take action.
mm,
So that's probably why I stayed much longer than I did, because of my own childhood trauma, things that
mhm,
happened to me, that I had no courage, energy. I didn't know how to get out of it. So yes, partly loyalty. I wanted my children to be happy, but I didn't have it in me. And I
mhm,
think that's why people do stay in relationships far longer than they really should or could. We won't use the word should, because of what's going on in their nervous system. Just
mhm.
it was terrifying. Terrifying, I thought, living by myself, and where was I going to live and how I was going to cope. And all my feelings came up, so many feelings that I had buried.
And I have a belief that we often recreate a version of our childhood in our adult life where we put ourselves in a place of, or try to put ourselves in a place of control so that we can. The tapping you can hear in the background is my golden retriever. She's had enough of the sofa, now she wants the cool floor. But we recreate our childhood, a version of it or a pattern of it in our adult life so that we can fix it. And was there any kind of reflection of your childhood in that experience with your husband, do you think?
Oh, yes. Yes, I chose someone who was very unavailable, unsupportive, couldn't meet my needs, because I hadn't been brought up with that unconditional love and support, my needs being met due to very traditional, strict parenting and also some abuse. So, I had very, very low self esteem, couldn't value myself. So, yeah, although I was desperately wanted to be loved. And it's so sad, isn't it? You really want that love and
Yeah.
to feel safe and be looked after. But no, as you say, I didn't create that. Excuse me.
What you created, though, was your taking control of you. You created in the correction, the bit where I always think that we correct it. We might not take the relationship correct it so the relationship is happy and healthy again. But I think it's the inner correction for yourself where you get your voice back, you are forced into creating your own identity, or not creating it, but learning it, and then having a life that's aligned with it. Because in the book you share that you were born as a twin, and how important identity and this journey that you've been on, which is about claiming your life. I mean, I just found your chapter in the book, and I know we're not gonna go into it in massive detail because we want people to buy the book. I don't know if I've mentioned we've got a book out called Catalysts of Change, but I could really see through your chapter the value of identity and how early how we show up is carved out. Can you share a little bit about
Yes. Well, yeah, being one of identical twins means that well, for me, I was always being compared. It's like the
mm,
twins. So it's extra hard. I mean, siblings have their own issues, don't they? But being identical twin is extra hard to find your own identity in who you are. And I realise that is my life's work, really. And it probably is for her as well, to find our own individuality. We were treated the same, dressed the same, shared everything. And it's inevitable to a certain extent that you do that, although I've tried very hard to do it differently with my own twins.
you got twins as
Yeah,
well?
they're not identical. And I always give them two cakes for their birthday and didn't treat them the same, never called them, you're the one that this and you're the one who's that. I didn't label them. But the labeling happens. So that, coupled with very little love and affection, really made it very hard to find myself. But, I don't want to just talk about the pain, because healing is possible, change is possible, whatever
Mm,
you come up with, whatever you have in your life. You get to that point where you take responsibility and you go, okay, I'm going to do the healing that has affected me and I'm going to change. And I think that voice that I heard
mm.
was in France was the beginning of that, a catalyst for me to do the work,
I
you
mean,
know.
I'm particularly interested in our identities, and how we. I mean, I remember when I was little how I knew how I wanted to be seen, and therefore I would act. We call it in NLP, act as if,
Yes.
don't we? And I want to be seen as being confident and strong, because my childhood was quite tricky, we'll just say, in this moment. And but I wanted people to be impressed by me, impressed with how I would handle things. And so I would act in this identity of being life and soul, which I then just continued with. But what happened for me in the continuing with this identity that I'd carved out was I was never honest with myself about what I
Mm.
was really feeling, because
Yeah.
I was keeping this facade up. I was keeping this, and I was attached to this identity. I've spoken, it's come up a lot in the other episodes, as identity and the value of it, and how we show ourselves into the world. So moving on from, because I wanted to just share that you were a twin, and then you're in this relationship, and now you moved out of it. How did you get to be doing the work you do in the world today, and just share the work you do in the world? How did you get there?
Yes. I had, it was what, 17 years ago. So I moved into a house with three of my children. The other one was grown up. And I remember, I think it was like New Year's Day, and I was really unhappy. And my then sister-in-law was staying. She said, Anya, I've learnt this kind of weird tapping thing. Do you want to try? Because I can see you're unhappy. I went, yeah, why not? So we tried it, and she didn't know what she was doing, but she knew enough, and we tapped together, and I felt so different. And then this calling came inside me. Right, you need to study this. This is your way. This is your way forward. And it was half term the week after, and by the Monday, must be the weekend, I'd phoned up, talked to this amazing EFT teacher, and started. I think I booked in the following weekend because my ex had the children, and started the training, did 3 days training. I never looked back, because EFT is incredible. It accesses subconscious. By tapping, you're releasing the stress hormones. It's the most amazing, amazing modality. And then I went on to learn matrix reimprinting, which is a deeper version. So I've done that for years, and I've had clients here and there, still did my other work, my teaching and bringing up children. But that was the beginning. Like, oh my goodness, I can feel better. Yeah, that was quite incredible. So I had a big healing journey with that, with the EFT. And then in lockdown, I'd sold my house. Just before lockdown, I was going to do some traveling. I went to America for the birth of my first grandchild, came back, went to Europe, and then lockdown started. So I did lots of fun things in lockdown because I didn't have a home. And I started studying online something called quantum energy coaching, which,
Quantum energy coaching.
yeah, called QEC. And this brings together lots of modalities. And it's about rewiring the brain with positive beliefs and affirmations, and letting go of trauma, and calming the nervous system. And this woman, Dr. Melanie Salmon, has brought so many things together. She's a doctor and a psychotherapist, that's right. And to me, that was the missing piece. I mean, it was all about timing, and it was the shame where I felt so bad about myself. I uncovered more and more layers of pain and trauma, but also really, really did so much more healing. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to combine them both now. I have the tools, because it can be quite quick. You don't have to do years of talking. In fact, that's really not very helpful, the years of talking therapy, because it's not changing. You're staying in the conscious. You need to access that subconscious to change.
And also, what I find with talking therapy is you find yourself making stuff up to make sense of things, don't you? And then it just further anchors the pain that you're in, because you think,
Yeah.
no wonder I feel so upset and so worthless, because this happened to me. So it's just like we just end up crafting this evidence that may or may not be true, that may be totally accurate or distorted, that supports. The mind is brilliant at recreating experiences into stories that make sense with our thinking today.
Yes.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I love that there are these amazing techniques that are almost no nonsense, but
Yeah.
while still being kind on us.
Yeah. And we can, as you say, hold on to our stories because it makes us feel better and like, yeah, they were really bad, you know. But actually, forgiveness is the key. And it was the deep forgiveness and healing work that's changed everything and given me peace in my heart about my past and what's happened to me, about being silenced or feeling not good enough, the abuse. I have peace in my heart. And that's just the biggest gift I have in my life now. And if I can give that to someone else when they're ready on their journey, because it's not for the faint hearted, but that forgiveness gives you the freedom and you do it for yourself. And that's what I've learned is so important, that forgive you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I remember there was something in my life that I was ashamed of, and it took years to forgive myself.
Yeah.
And when I did, and it will have been at least 10 years of me giving myself a hard time, carrying this sense of unworthiness, less value.
Mm.
But the forgiveness um, was so critical to me just letting it go. Um, do you do specific processes with people so that they're clear on what they're forgiving themselves
Yeah.
for?
And they forgive everyone else as well who was involved in it.
Yes,
But
yeah.
as you say, forgiving yourself. And that can be the hardest thing to do, to forgive
Why do you
yourself.
think why do you think it is that we have a generally speaking, that we as humans have a reluctance to forgive ourselves? Why do you think that is?
Oh, that's such a deep question.
Hmm.
How would I answer that? Maybe it's because we're very hard on ourselves and we expect so much, and to be that vulnerable and, you know, that's a real sign of love to get to there. And also it's another part of letting go of the story. It's
Mhm.
very, very deep work.
Mm. I was talking the other day with Dawn Breslin on a podcast, and we were talking about how we hold on to stories because our life is a sequence of stories, isn't it? You know, we look at chapters of our life, and usually they are a story that we tell people, and there's something about those stories connecting with our identity. But when we're attached to a story, we hold ourselves in the reality that that story created, don't we? What, in your experience, what's the risk to holding on to a story, however accurate we believe it to be?
That we're never free to feel the joy, the love, the freedom. It holds us back. It will keep us in those lower emotions, those lower vibrations. And of course, our mind wants to protect us. So I understand why people do that. And I've done it for many years. But when you go beyond that, that's the real freedom of your identity, who you are, and to feel that love and joy and gratitude for being alive. You know, I never had that before. So that's the bonus. And of course, yeah, the risk, the secondary gain is that we lose out on that. But
Yeah,
but also to remember that our brain is keeping ourselves safe, that we have to be very kind and do it in a gentle and supportive way.
yeah, absolutely. I think when I hear inspirational speakers sharing their journey of anguish and pain, there's a part of me that really admires them. There's a big part of me that really admires them standing up and sharing their journey for the benefit of our own growth. But then there's a part of me that thinks, but each time you tell this story, your system is reliving it
Yes,
and reawakening that nervous system,
yes,
those trigger points that then afterwards you have to like remind yourself I'm out of that. So I always have a bit of a compassionate concern when speakers share their deep anguish and relive it on the stage, that
yes,
that their body is reliving it, their cells are reliving it. Because you work with speakers, don't you, helping them tap into their confidence to be on a stage? Is there something that you have to do with them that stops their system from reliving their story in particular, or
yeah.
is it they just switch out the story?
That's so interesting. And as you say, what story do you want to be? Do you want to be in your past, or do you want to be in your future? What story do you want to create? And that's part of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and I follow him. You know, there's a point when I believe I don't want to tell my old story. No, I want to tell the one of my future. But to answer your question, yeah, solopreneurs who want to speak on stage and make videos and things, it's usually the same beliefs that go on, you know, the feeling unworthy or not good enough. And the fear is there. What people are going to think of me, the imposter syndrome, the judgment, fear of judgment. So they're kind of familiar ones that come up all the time. And so we work on that and go back to where they originated. We can rewire the brain with feeling safe, and we can take action and speak. So it's really uncovering what it is that holds them back. Is it the shame? Is it the fear? Is it something that happened at school where they were laughed at, or parents treating them badly, or whatever it is? That's where we go to.
Or is it that they think the audience, because what I used to do, and I almost gave up speaking. And I remember me saying to my coach at the time, I don't want to speak anymore. And she said, why? I said, I just feel like a big target. You know, I feel like I'm leaving myself wide open. And she said, well, what is it that you don't want people to think about you? And I thought, we're going to be here forever. Because this feeling that I don't want to speak on the stage anymore, I just thought, why am I opening myself up for this
Yes.
dread I almost felt? And I said, right, well, I don't want them to think that, oh, here we go, I've heard all this before. She said, yeah, and what else? Oh, I thought, we're going to be here for ages. I don't want them to think, oh, this is a pile of rubbish. Yeah, what else? She's rubbish. Yeah, what else? And I couldn't think of anything else. I couldn't think of anything else. But those things were massive in my mind. I'd not voiced them. I'd not written them down. I hadn't articulated it. I hadn't got to the root cause of what is it that I think the audience is thinking about me. And what was happening was, and I was totally aware of it, was I was thinking about what's the critic in the audience going to think of me? And I was almost crafting everything I say and everything I do around convincing the critic. And she said to me this brilliant thing: those people cannot stand the air you breathe. I was liberated. I was completely liberated, because it didn't matter what I said or how I dressed or how I walked. So it was what I represented as a whole was a complete turn off to them for whatever reason.
Yes.
It might be that they'd seen a bad speaker, or they were getting pushed into doing things that they weren't yet ready to do by other people. And then they see somebody that's like, oh, here we go. But in my mind, it didn't matter what they were actually thinking. In my mind, I was thinking, I bet they're thinking this. So it was
Yes.
still my thoughts. And
Yes.
so
We make it up.
we make it up, and then we suffer.
Yeah. And it reminds me of somebody who came to my Tapping into Confidence program, and she got so far being successful, and then she held herself back. And we did this exercise where you see yourself on stage and the audience come in, and then your family come in. And then she realized that the fear of judgment was her family. So because of various things from her
Pinpointed.
childhood, so she just pushed the family away, took them out of the equation, and then her fear of judgment went. So once you have that awareness,
Yeah,
and
it's
you realise,
powerful
why am I
stuff.
listening to them? They weren't nice to me before. Why am I listening to them? I don't need their approval.
I was going to an event, and I was a speaker at this event, and I thought, I'll video some of it, and then I'll get some good sound bites like I see other speakers do. And my speaking style is it's very natural. It's as though everybody's come round to my house for a cup of tea,
I love that.
or a gin and tonic. But I thought, right, I want to be caught on camera with this dynamic sound bites, as though people can imagine me speaking in auditoriums. And I was walking Lexi in the morning, and I got really nervous. And I thought, why am I so nervous? I'm speaking to 50, 60 people in a room. We're going to do the glass walk. And of course, that's always unpredictable as to how people are going to feel, what fear it's going to bring to the surface. And once I thought, oh, it's because you're in manufacture mode, Lisa. You're manufacturing a version of you that's going to look good on camera. Forget that. What is your purpose on the day? What's your purpose today? Right, my purpose is to sow a seed that will last them a lifetime so they can reach into their own resource of empowerment. My nerves went. I thought, this has got nothing to do with Lisa Clifford. Whether there was a soundbite or not is irrelevant. So it's really interesting with the work that you must do with speakers, helping them get ready, because it can be a million different things. What's the common thing that speakers maybe come to you with a fear of, but actually underneath it's something else?
Yes. So I guess they all come knowing that they're playing small, they're hiding, that they're not being who they could be. So that they
Mm,
come with that awareness. So they do know there's something going on.
mm,
They all have imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to do this? That's such a common one. Like
really?
doubting ourselves and our voice and our worth. Who am I? I don't know enough. I don't live. All this not enoughs. And then,
Which goes to that comparison, doesn't it, that you speak of in the book, and also today, about when you're a twin, other people compare you. But what we do as well is we compare ourselves, and we also don't compare apples with apples. We look at their most amazing quality and compare it against our least bright aspect of ourselves, and then as if to create this contrast for some form of anguish, as though focusing on that will make sure that we stay alert and focused and
yes.
in our growth mindset. But we don't need to do that to ourselves. Anyway, I've interrupted. Sorry.
No,
And
no,
then the
that's
root cause.
so, yes. And it's always a belief about themselves and a fear, and it will go back to their childhood. They would have learned
Mm,
something in their childhood. And whether it's a big trauma or little trauma, there'll be something there where they decided it wasn't safe to stand up and be seen or to speak, or they're not good enough, something wrong with them, or the shame. I think generally people don't realize the toxic of shame, the things that have happened to you, things you've taken on, and experiences you've had, because that will stop you in your tracks. It stopped me for many years from being successful as a practitioner, but it will stop you taking action because you feel there's something wrong with you and you don't even have a right to be who you are at its deepest level. So I'm always looking for that, because people don't realize it. They don't recognize it. And I don't think it's understood by enough people.
mm.
Damage that toxic shame does to you. But we can release that, you know, that
How long
doesn't have
does
to
it
stay.
take? Because you said it like that, as though it can happen like that.
It can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long does it take?
Well, obviously it depends on how much trauma you've had in your childhood, how much work you've done on yourself. But there was somebody I worked with in our community, I won't say them, she had 6 sessions, uncovered some strong beliefs, and she went on and now she's running a group she's always wanted to run. You can see her being visible, making videos and reels, and hers was 6 sessions. But, some people are more, and some people benefit from just being in the group and some one-to-one. It's so individual what you're bringing. The group dynamics are incredibly powerful. That's why I love running groups, because not only do we support each other, the tapping in groups is more effective than tapping on your own. There's some reason, there's been some research that it will release the stress hormones faster. And it's knowing that you're not alone. Other people are feeling and thinking the same as you. And that support and encouragement. So that really helps people bloom. I'm going to use my word, bloom
Yeah.
and blossom
Because they're in
in
an
group work.
amplified, when people are tapping together, there's an amplified vibration, isn't there?
Yes,
That we kind of all benefit from being
yes.
in that vibe.
Right, you've put that really eloquently. Yeah, and you get the borrowing benefits that are talked about with tapping.
Oh, I love that. Borrowing
Yeah,
benefits.
yeah.
Tell me what that means. I love the saying, borrowing benefits.
So it comes from Gary Craig, the inventor of EFT. So say we were in a group and you'd talked about your issue and you'd given it a number, like 10 is really high and 1 isn't. And then we'd say, right, Lisa, just put it down now and we're going to do some tapping. So even if it wasn't your words or your issue, you'd still get the benefit. because we're all in that collective consciousness. So it could be tapping on someone else's words and you get the benefit.
Hmm.
I think there's always some energetic connection, that because we're all connected, and I know that what one person says, another one resonates with, because I hear women say that all the time to me as well. So you can just feel better and you haven't even been thinking about your issue. How good is
Yeah.
that?
And sometimes, I mean, I think there's no coincidence of who comes together in a circle in a room, even if we do not relate or even like someone. They've got a role. They've got a
Oh, yes.
role in our healing. Maybe it's a mirror, maybe it's showing us a trigger, maybe it's showing us some resistance we've got, because what we resist persists. Everybody is a gift to us. And the more the irritators, probably the greater the healing.
I totally agree with you. I
So
resonate
you
with that. Oh, yes.
have you seen that in your circles?
I think we're
A
all very
dynamic.
kind to each other in the circles, but we have the same issues. But it's not so much the mirror coming up that you're talking about when you see someone in real life. Yeah, people talk to
Mm.
you about that. Definitely. And for me too, those mirrors that come up, not only your children, but your family and people you meet who really annoy you. And you think, oh, okay, there's a little gift there. What am I not seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I often will say I'm driving and somebody does something that gets my attention and winds me up, whether it's cutting me up or roundabout, not letting me out or something like that. And sometimes, if I'm in the right frame of mind, I will think, what is this a reflection of? Where am I not giving myself space? Where am I being,
Mm,
whatever it is I'm choosing to label that with?
yes.
Say somebody doesn't let me out the roundabout. Where am I blocking myself in?
Mm,
Where am I cornering myself? Where am I not giving myself time or something?
yes,
And if I, because it's all a choice as to what I choose to think and
exactly.
what angle I choose to come up with and what aspects I choose to work on. All right, well, I'm not giving myself enough time when it comes to food prep, so therefore I'm eating something that's not very good. When I say not very good, it's very tasty, but maybe moment on the lips, lifetime on the hips type of meal. And so I can then, I just use it for what is it that I need awakening to. So I love it when I choose to see mirrors and then adapt or change something in my life that benefits me. It's not
Absolutely.
saying that that person's right for not letting me out. It's just saying it's caught my attention and I'm going to
Yeah,
choose to use it for me. And there's those kind of little reflections everywhere, isn't there?
there certainly is. Yeah, yeah.
So
Sometimes we
lovely. In closing, what would you say meant for more means to you?
meant for more. Personally, yeah, that's such an interesting question. I think for me, I knew I loved being a mum, loving up children, but I always knew there was more to me, that I'd been through this very unhappy childhood for a reason, and I've chosen to see the positive to then support other people and to use those gifts, that the healing gifts, the experiences, my wisdom, everything I've learned, I'm using that moving forward in my life and knowing that I am here to make a difference. It's an inner knowing, you know, that there's a lot more left in me from the bringing up children, having a career, and this time of my life. I'm really here to make a difference. And to me, it's a soul's calling. It is much bigger than me,
Mm.
much bigger. So I have to listen and then take action, because the voices get louder. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Anya, for your openness, your trust, and the gift of your journey so that we all get to see ourselves in your story for our own growth. Thank you so much, lovely.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for being the gift that you are and allowing me to have this conversation with you. I've loved it.
Me too.